Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to India Tonight. I'm Sumita Kareer, back with the show that deep dives into the biggest stories that are shaping our markets, economies, geopolitics, and society. And tonight on the show, we begin by putting the spotlight on a story that's shaken the very core of our society, the institution of marriage. Well, a couple's travel outing was meant to be their blissful honeymoon, but it ended up in a chilling case of a murder. After a 16-day search and nationwide intrigue, the mystery of the missing indoor couple in Meghalaya has come to a chilling turn, with the wife, Sonam Raghuvanshi, reportedly surrendering in Ghazipur after allegedly plotting her husband's murder during their honeymoon. That's what reports are suggesting. The motive? Well, a reported extramarital affair and possibly more. While the case throws up disturbing questions about love, money, and the hidden contracts that often govern marriages in India. So tonight we ask, on the show, are Indian marriages built on shaky foundations, from prenups and inheritance to coercion and control? We put the spotlight on the business of marriage and an institution. Does it need reform, or individuals entering the system need to be made aware of changed realities? Well, to discuss many more aspects of that story, I'm now joined by a stellar panel of guests who's joining us this evening. Dr. Anjali Chhabria, a psychiatrist and a psychotherapist, who's also a marriage counselor. Nisreen Mamaji, CFP, I beg your pardon, Money Works Financial Services. Thank you very much, ladies, for joining us this evening on ET Now. Let me come to you first, Anjali. I want to understand from you, what does this case really highlight? Does it highlight that as a society, perhaps we have failed somewhere when it comes to educating our young about healthy relationships and conflict management, particularly with respect to this recent case? Should we perhaps ask the question that, what really is the need to get married? Do you feel that today's young are somewhere conflicted when it comes to that very question?
So I think this case has actually raised up a lot of issues. Okay, we definitely do not know the details as yet, but definitely marriage needs to be rethinked. The concept of marriage, the institution of marriage, how people get married, why they get married, and what do they discuss beyond the wedding. There's so much attention given to the wedding ceremony, the how and when, and the dances and singing and everything. But are we really understanding what is marriage about? Do people even discuss the important issues before they get married? So I think lots of things to be spoken about.
Right, Dr. Anjali, very valid point that you've raised on why people need to get married. That question really needs to be answered before a couple actually decides to get married, because a lot of focus is mostly given on the venue, on the preparations, but hardly any talk happens when it comes to educating our youth about the expectations, the changed expectations that now partners have of each other. But let me also delve into another aspect so far as marriages are concerned, and let me come to you, Nisreen, on that, on the point of economics. I mean, you had the Dowry Act because wife murder was assumed to be taking place for economic reasons, that is to either get remarried or to get more dowry. Similarly, when we look at the other side, the other angle, which essentially is inheritance, how big of a motivation when we look at the institution of marriage, how big is that motivation of inheritance?
It's actually very, very applicable. And as you mentioned earlier, and so did Anjali, when the newlyweds are coming together, you spend a lot of time on astrology. You want to have the kundlis matched. You also spend a lot of time with the wedding planner because you want to make sure the rituals are done in the way that you like. But very rarely do we see the couples sit down together to discuss, income, liabilities, financial habits and aspirations, inheritance, as you also rightly mentioned. So in many Indian families, actually today, the in-laws still influence money matters. So the young couple is sometimes, very much kind of confused as to what their role will be in the upcoming marriage, what exactly will be their share of the expenses, what is the income contribution that they have to make, and also in terms of, what do we want to do as a couple? What are our goals? Are we planning a holiday? The first thing comes the honeymoon. So, are we spending on the honeymoon ourselves, or is it a gift from our parents? Okay. After that, it could be, putting some money down for a down payment for a home. You might want to buy a car jointly, and later on the children come in. So the entire relationship between the young couples is about money, because all their entire journey together will have financial decisions. So a lot of times this is lacking among newlyweds, because they haven't really had a face to face, and nor have they actually gone to a financial planner, or taken some advice from a professional as to what should be their discussions on marriage. In fact, not only the couple, but the families also should be involved, where they clearly talk about inheritance as well. They can at least broach the subject so the couple knows what is in it for them, and as far as the parents are concerned, and what they're going to be handed over, and also their own salaries, what they are earning, if they are business people, what are the debts they have, what are the liabilities they have, what is the card debt. A lot of people, young people, are just swiping cards. And so these are the conversations that are very essential, prior to the marriage, of course.
Absolutely. Very valid points that you've made, Nisreen. And of course, the financial aspect of marriage, the economic aspect of marriage, that needs to be discussed in detail. At this point, let me also welcome on the panel Mrunalini Deshmukh. She's a senior matrimonial and a family lawyer. Mrunalini, let me talk to you on this particular matter when it comes to the legality of these marriages, or when you look at some of these cases that come with respect to these broken marriages. Is the institution of marriage on shaky foundations? And when you talk about the family's involvement, so far as financials are concerned, so far as economic planning is concerned, is this some sort of a threat being issued by parents? Do you see that happening when it comes to pushing people into marriage, pushing young ones into marriage, into the families that they want their kids to get into?
So thank you for having me over on this panel discussion. And I would like to state that today you have to understand the concept of marriage as per the strata of the society that we are, the different stratas of the society that we have. Uh, for the people from the urban metros, or the metros or two-tier cities, etc., the marriage is something which is a voluntary decision taken. So I would not agree that it is something that the elders or the parents push them into. So it is something that they take voluntarily, a chance. Secondly, and more importantly, is the foundation of marriage very shaky? Again, this has to be understood in the facts and circumstances of the case. Yes, we do see a surge in the number of divorces that are knocking on the doors of the court. Are the parties knocking on the doors of the court asking for divorce? And there is substantial rise in such cases. But I think what we are talking about, divorce, is a small percentage of the marriages that are going bust. What we really need to understand, and I understand from the discussion that we are having here, what are the priorities that the couple should have at the time when they get married? And I think that is the most important question that they need to do. As the earlier panelist has also said, and I think she put it up very well, that today people are only talking about what the wedding celebrations have to be. How much does it have to be? Where does it have to be? And what are the honeymoon plans, etc. What we really need to understand, and I think there's where someone like Anjali will come in picture, would be when the parties realize that you are entering into a relationship of marriage, which, as they say, till death do us apart, would be an ideal situation. And if you want to create that situation, what are the do's and the don'ts that you need to have? So the do's and the don'ts are something like the temperamental issues. The other things are that what are the adjustmental issues that you need to do. Thirdly, what do you need to do about your finances when you are getting married? Because today, a large number of women who are also getting married are also working, earning, having wealth of their own. Fourthly, and more importantly, today everything is hunky dory. Parties are in love, and they're absolutely on cloud nine. But they should also think of a situation, unfortunately, that if the marriage goes south, what are the arrangements that we want to make as far as the children are concerned, or as far as their wealth is concerned, or their marital assets are concerned? This is where, as a lawyer, I've been advocating that there should be introduced in India the prenups agreement, which are popular overseas, because that will cut down a lot of litigation. This litigation is a drain on finance. Litigation is a drain on the emotions. Litigation is a the drain of where it takes away, major years of your life. So prenups are something that we need to introduce. Though I may confess on your channel that today we have a large number of couples who want to get married who say that, ma'am, we do understand. They come to me, ma'am, we do understand prenups are not absolutely an executable or some kind of a document which is 100% legal. But is there some way that you can help us draw up some document which will at least morally, to a large extent, sort of, guide us in the event our marriages go? So we do a lot of what is known as akin to a prenup, what is known as an MOU or a memorandum of understanding between the intending parties, where they disclose what their concerns are, and we document it. We as lawyers tell each of them to take independent legal advice. We as lawyers tell them that, listen, as we speak today, this is at best the intent of the parties, which the courts will consider in the event your marriage goes south. And that is the reason that you need to understand the role of this MOU vis-a-vis a prenup, which otherwise could be a valid document.
Absolutely.
But today I am telling you that increasingly the young
Absolutely.
ones, or even
Right.
the ones who are getting married after their great divorces, are
Right.
entering into an MOU, because at the end of the day, the most important security ultimately,
Okay.
if a marriage fails, are the finances.
Okay.
And I think that's what they need to really sort of, take care
Right.
of.
Absolutely. Mrinalini, but I bet that that's a very small percentage so far as deciding on a prenup is concerned. Let me also take our viewers through how common are prenups globally. Well, according to the research that we have, in the United States, 15% of marriage or engaged Americans had a prenup, followed by United Kingdom, Australia, France, and Asia. So let me get the perspective of Dr. Anjali on this. Dr. Anjali, when people come to you for counseling, are they open to this idea? Or have you seen this around you? How open are people to this idea of having a prenup? Because like divorce, perhaps in my understanding, this essentially could also be a taboo.
Absolutely. I think the idea of premarital counseling itself is not very popular. And this is what I tell people is that you're doing everything. You're matching kundlis, you're spending so many lakhs of rupees on the wedding ceremony. But have you got the couple to sit with each other? And as we want all the marriages to, to do well, there are people who are, who would not want to get married, who are forced to get married. There are people who are not oriented sexually towards the opposite sex who are forced to get married, and etc., etc. So we are still, I think, a little far away from the idea of prenup, because the minute one party says, should we have a prenup, the other party may also start looking at them suspiciously and saying, oh, what are your intentions? Are your intentions to end the marriage? So I think as a culture, of course, there are few people who would like to do it, but it is very far from the number that, should be ideally doing it.
Right, Dr. Anjali, and that's essentially what Indians largely think, given that they think that the institution of marriage is based on the foundations of trust. So this seems like an aberration. At this point, let me also welcome Ms. Flavia Agnes, women's rights lawyers and co-founder of Majlis. Ms. Agnes, we're talking about having something like a prenup agreement, like they are present in the West, that could perhaps reduce resentment or tension in failing marriages. What is your opinion on having a prenup? What is it that you have noted, and how can Indian families be sensitized about this idea?
I don't think prenup, we are familiar with the concept of a prenup, and marriages are arranged here, the issue of dowry is there, the issue of exchange of gifts, etc. is there in the marriage. Now, in that, if you have a prenup there, whoever suggests it will be suspect that you are envisaging a dissolution of marriage, you are envisaging a divorce in the near future, so you want to have a prenup. And secondly, I think even more important, women don't have much negotiating power in the country. women are even their parents do not have much negotiating power within the marriage at the time of marriage also, and there's no equality between them. So a prenup would work where there is equality between the sexes. Men and women both are mature enough to understand what they're getting into. Both are bringing their assets into the marriage, and they're concerned about what's going to happen to these assets. Now, at the time of marriage, the woman doesn't know the husband's earnings, his assets, etc. And there's every possibility that he will not disclose it very frankly. So she lacks the tools to get into a prenup with her husband. And I think this is the main problem. Maybe at some future date, we shall accept prenup. But at this moment, I doubt whether society is ready for a prenup. Having said that, I feel if there is a prenup that is negotiated on equality terms, it will really help in the when the marriage is dissolved, so that issues of conflict become minimized, and there is a division of assets at that
Absolutely.
point.
Absolutely, and there is no bitterness. Right.
Yeah, we need to have
Right,
much more thought
right,
on that.
Ms. Agnes. So there is no bitterness on one of the sides. Yes. Yes, and so as to avoid bitterness and of course, any sort of discord that may happen as a result of the marriage going sour. So that perhaps a mindset change needs to be brought about having prenups. But Nisreen, this is something that we talk of when it comes to urban centers, the more cosmopolitan cities like Mumbai and Delhi. But when you talk about rural areas or tier 2 towns and three cities, what alternate arrangements can be arrived at so that there are healthier financial dynamics in the institution of marriage when they enter marriage?
Well, actually, to be very honest, the prenup is a much later part of the entire, issues. What is very important and what I always counsel the couples who come to me, typically they come after they already married for a few years, is to always maintain, your separate bank accounts, because it's not because you're expecting trouble, in the marriage, but because it's financially wiser. So what you do is, even when you're spending for your expenses, you do it in the ratio of your income. Now, if one person is earning 60 or 70% of the joint family income, then that person is responsible also for the 60 to 70% of the joint expenses. So, you spend also in the ratio of your of your income, and you save also the balance amount in your own names. So there are various choices of investments. You can save in, in fixed deposits. You can save in mutual funds. You can save in, provident funds, etc., whatever suits your risk or appetite. So you have to also make sure that your savings are done in your individual name, so that if there is trouble in paradise, you have your own income to fall back on. A lot of time, women also take breaks from their marriage. It might be, for pregnancy, for child bearing and child rearing, or to also look after a dependent parent at home. In those years, if she has her own independent source of income, which can substitute her salary, the morale of the couple also remains very strong. And, together she will also have some amount of self-respect, even if she's not working. Because as a working person or a person who's running her own business for many years, she doesn't really want to raise her arm and, ask for money later on from her husband, because, the mindset is already developed for her to be an independent and empowered person. So these are the kind of dynamic and the conversations that one should be having, not only in tier 1, but in tier 2 and tier 3 cities, to make sure that, your income is separate. Now, in case you're a husband, and you are from the beginning of the marriage, you are not working outside the home, but obviously you're working inside the home. So, there should be some amount of savings of your household income, which should be on your personal name. And that is a conversation that, if not started or initiated by the husband or his family, then she must also have the courage to speak up, to make sure that there is some amount of money for her personal needs. Okay, she might want to gift her husband. She might want to gift her own parents. She might need to pay the school fees if the husband is not available. So those are the instances where the woman has to make sure that there is some amount of income on her own name, where she doesn't have to ask her husband, or she has access to this in times of emergencies. Also,
Right.
a kind of emergency or corpus funding between the couple should be developed, So that is another conversation that they should be.
Right, and all of these are very important points that you've brought about. Nisreen, let me come to you, Dr. Ranjali. Nisreen was, of course, speaking about the fact that there should be a conversation that needs to be had on how incomes could be separate and how women need to be independent as well. And something, that's something that we've seen trickle down to tier 2 and 3 towns and cities. But our families, especially when you talk about extended family dynamics, are extended families open to this idea of perhaps separating financial assets and having conversations on how those assets will be managed?
Communication about roles, communication about duties, communication about expectations, and then we talk about finances. So definitely this is a very new idea in our country, but we need these conversations to start, because why is it expected tomorrow if the wife is doing a better job than the husband and she has to shift to another city? Till we do not have these discussions, this is going to create a problem, because the husband is saying, but in our house this does not happen. You're expected to either leave your job or to follow me. So we want our youngsters, before they go onto the threshold of marriage, that they need to start having these discussions. And today, even at tier 2 and tier 3, they are exposed to the rest of the world. So they have to stand up and start saying that, okay, this is what I'm expecting. This is what my expectations are. And can we sit down and discuss this? If I am earning today, how much of it am I expected to spend? Is it okay? Do I need somebody's permission before I save money? And I want to say that, yes, I would like to spend on my family if I need to. So I think our girls need to rise up and talk, but we also need to have these discussions between each other, between families, and if required, have a third person. And that is where the role of counseling comes in. So I think premarital counseling is a must, where we need to cover emotional, financial, social responsibilities also.
Right. Premarital counseling is something that couples could look forward to. But let me come to you, Flavia, on the point of changed gender dynamics. Do you really see very many couples in rural areas, in urban areas, really understand that gender dynamics have essentially changed, because the institution of marriage in itself has undergone a humongous change from what it was perhaps during the 1990s to now?
Actually, in the urban areas, if you see Bombay, for instance, there is quite a lot of change here. Women are asserting their rights. Many women are working, and they don't easily give up their jobs after marriage. They continue to work. But this is not the situation in small towns and rural areas. There you see the women still holding on to the old pattern. The family is holding on to the old pattern. The husband holding on to the old value system. And there's not much change. Not only that, when a woman tries to assert herself, saying, I want to be independent, I want to have my own income, etc., then there's a lot of conflict within the family. Particularly if she has small children, if she has to raise her children, that becomes a primary duty. She cannot neglect the household. She cannot neglect her children in order to hold on to the job. Now here comes the conflict area. Now what is happening in our country is that we do not have equality in marriage. Notionally it is there, and the Hindu Marriage Act, for instance, there is this notion that husband and wife are equal. But in effect, it is not so. The roles and duties and responsibilities of the husband and the wife are very, very different. And regarding prenup, actually, we need to have much more conversations. Women need to understand what is meant by prenup, how it is going to help them or hinder them. They have to have their own idea about their own earning capacity, about their finances, about their assets, investments, etc., which they do not have. Even in urban areas, they do not have. men are very shy of handling finances. They let their fathers or husbands handle it. So when you say a prenup agreement, unless you question the gender roles, what is expected of her within marriage, what she expects at the time of dissolution of the marriage, etc. We are not able to come to a conclusion about
Absolutely.
what that prenup agreement should be. And here, what Dr. Anjali Jabria said is very correct.
Absolutely.
You need a lot of counseling here for them to understand what we mean by these documents, the agreement regarding assets, property, maintenance, etc. So,
Right.
And you see the
Right.
women who are not working, for instance,
Right.
they have very high expectations from what they can get from their husband. So this is not what the husband is thinking or his family is thinking.
Yes.
Because they
Yes.
think maintenance is a dole. So the equality
Yes.
quotient is not there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that understanding needs to be brought about with respect to what each other's responsibilities are going to be, given the fact, like I was stating earlier, that the institution of marriage in itself has undergone a humongous change, and hence all the more need for a communication to happen in all amongst all the sides, in fact, including the families as well of the bride and groom. But let me get in a final word from you, Ms. Deshmukh. What kind of an impact, when these cases come to light, what kind of an impact do these have on the collective psyche of prospective brides and grooms, of men and women who are looking to get married? Do you really see perhaps the fact that, more number of people are choosing not to get married? Has it come to that point yet?
To a large extent, your question is absolutely appropriate. So people, I would not say are not getting married, but are really having a second thought if they want to get married. And when they are seeing these kind of cases, because see, ultimately, it's happening around you. It could be in your extended family, it could be amongst your friends, it could be among your other social circles. And which is why when I was talking about this prenup and why do so many queries come to me, is one of the reasons is because they see what is happening around. Now that may not be, according to some of the panelists, the need of the hour, and there are other issues, and I completely understand and endorse their views. But this is also one side which you have brought out, and I think I'm glad you brought this out, that this is creating a lot of uncertainty in the minds of the boys and the girls, if I may put it, who want to enter into matrimony. Boys are worried about what happens to their wealth. Girls are worried about what happens suppose they get married, as far as what is it that they will get from the husband or things like that. So, and they don't want to get into any kind of issues which involves litigation, which involves long drawn going to courts and doing this. So the question that they come to is that if we are planning to do that, and again it's in the planning stage, is it appropriate for us to have some kind of an understanding which could be a moral binding at best as one could say, and could lead us to that. And believe you me, the fear of getting married and God forbid the marriage going south and the aftermath of it and the procedure itself kills people and litigants. We see people languishing in courts for years and years unless it's a mutual consent divorce agreement that parties are there. Everybody wants to exercise his or her own rights, and the ancillary reliefs like a child custody or a child support or the wife support, maintenance, matrimonial assets distribution, and so on and so forth can take years, and it can rob you of your youth, of your age, and things like that. And which is why people are reconsidering marriage, or if they want marriage, are there any kind of the sort of situations or maybe agreements that one can bring forward which will ring fence their assets? And when I'm talking about it, Flavia, I'm also talking about women coming to me and telling me, can we have a
Right.
prenup, Mrinalini?
Right.
Because I have substantial, and as you rightly said, I have substantial wealth
Okay.
of my own, some self-earned, some inherited, gifted, etc. How can I ring fence
Right.
it? And because the Hindu Marriage Act says that both the husband and the wife are equal rights over the,
Right.
I mean, both can claim alimony and maintenance, and also the Parsi Marriage Act. So this is not, I mean, much as I
Right.
understand your concern, this is not only coming
Right.
from men. I'm getting a lot of queries from women
Right.
and their
Absolutely.
parents who have substantial wealth of their own.
Yes.
So this is something new, which is an urban metro concept. I completely understand with
Absolutely.
you. But this is something that one can't overlook. It may be a
Right.
minuscule. It may be a very minor percentage. But this is also what is happening in society, which is giving them the fear of getting married. Or you want to get married, but please ring fence so that there is no sort of, agony for both the parties in future.
Right, Ms. Deshmukh. Right, Ms. Deshmukh. So this uncertainty and fear, it's coming from all quarters, from the side of in-laws, from the side of the prospective bride and groom. But Dr. Anjali, when we talk about, the uncertainty and fear related to marriage, now that we've come to a point wherein, there are questions being raised on the institution of marriage. So what changes does marriage as an institution need to go through so that it can become more relevant to present needs to present-day couples?
So I think some of the changes are already happening. A lot of dowry has been eradicated in the bigger cities and in a lot of communities. In fact, even the expenses of marriage in a lot of communities has already been, people say that we are going to have equal expenditure. So there is no expectation from the girl's side. But definitely we need to have more communications. We need to have these agreements which actually people are scared of, but make them secure. Because from what Mrinalini has been talking, it is actually something to provide security. From what the other panelists have been talking, Flavia, and it's saying that okay, we need to discuss, we need to enter marriage in a safe and secure manner for the right reasons, not just to have a kind of a ceremony which we are going to put on social media. And then, so we also need to remember that marriage is a beginning. It is not the end. It's only in stories that we hear that they got married and they lived happily ever after. There are lots of challenges that marriage brings. We need to be realistically aware of these challenges, and we need to maturely handle them as they come. And with more knowledge comes maturity. So I think we need to have the knowledge of all of this which is available to us.
Right. Absolutely. And, a couple of very interesting points that, ladies, that you've presented tonight on the institution of marriage, the changes that it needs to undergo, the importance of having a dialogue, a conversation before the marriage actually happens, not just about, what each of these parties are going to wear, where the marriage is going to be conducted, but about financials of both sides. And of course, perhaps the need to also be open to an idea of having a prenup. All of those important conversations need to be had before a couple actually gets married. And most importantly, if it doesn't work, well, you can always call it quits. And as a society, we have to be agreeing to that aspect as well. Well, on that note, thank you very much, ladies, for joining us this evening and sharing your thoughts and perspectives on this big story that we're tracking right here on ET Now.